I want to go across first to Terry Milevsky. We've seen over the weekend in some of the gurdwaras where hoardings and posters had been put up asking for Indian diplomats to be attacked, assaulted, killed. Someone's taken them down. This could be the Canadian government, these could be people at the Gurdwara, we don't know, but in Canada those hoardings seem to have come down. Do you see Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government try and de-escalate tensions, or are they looking to up the ante even further? Where do you see this go from here? Terry Milevsky.
It's possible that there was a small-scale tactical move to, maybe we shouldn't, this isn't the right time to have these posters in people's faces, as it were, right now. It's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? And that reflects an important development in this affair, I think. Namely, that at the beginning of this affair, the Khalistanis in Canada were jumping for joy. You see, the Prime Minister himself has now endorsed our point of view that the Indians are out there killing Khalistanis, and this is a triumph for us. Well, of course, the problem was that the spotlight of publicity, when trained upon the Khalistanis, to which most Canadians rarely pay any attention at all, was an embarrassing spotlight, because people started to realize, oh, you mean these are the people, they're putting up what posters? They're putting up posters of the worst mass murderer in Canadian history, the Kanishka bomber, Talvinder Parmar. He's got a life-size martyr poster glorified on the side of a major Gurdwara. Then they started to notice, who is this character Panoon? They don't know who this Panoon character is from so-called Sikhs for Justice, the guys who are running the referendum campaign. Well, what's wrong with the referendum? Now they're looking more closely and they're seeing, oh, Panoon is putting out these videos. He's the one that named the referendum campaign after Talvinder Parmar. Panoon is the one who was, oh, we saw that video of him burning the Indian flag. And what about the video which he calls I Am Dilawar, in which he steps into the shoes of famous assassins like the suicide bomber who killed Chief Minister Bayant Singh of Punjab in 1995, and more. What about Panoon's signs and posters calling upon Sikh soldiers fighting in the north to desert the Indian army and go fight for the Chinese? And more and more and more, including, of course, more recently, the killer posters naming and shaming Indian diplomats, painting targets on their backs and calling them killers. So people are now learning what they have been ignoring for many years. This has been going on for 40 years. The Canadians have been looking the other way, not taking much interest, and taking the view that it doesn't concern them what the Khalistanis are doing in Canada. It's an Indian problem. It's not our problem. Well, now they're being reminded, are they not, that most of the passengers who died in the Kanishka bombing were Canadian citizens. So I think they're not jumping for joy anymore.
Abhijit Iyer Mitra, we're being told that the Americans provided some of the signal, human, technical intelligence, which forms part of the basis why Justin Trudeau spoke the way that he did. And it's a bit rich coming from the United States, which very actively and openly goes out and takes down terrorists who have been hurting American interests. But yet, in this case, seems to be wanting to preach morality in the complete absence of putting forth even a shred of evidence. Even the Canadian opposition leader we saw in that report was asking for proof.
Absolutely, Rahul. Before I start, Rahul, do you know who François Mario Bachand was?
Okay, go on. Tell us.
He was actually a chap associated with the Front de Libération de Québec. And Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, ordered his assassination. So the predecessor of the CSIS, the current Canadian Intelligence Service, carried out his assassination in Paris in 1971. 1971, incidentally, was the same year that Canada was pretty much supporting Pakistan, carrying out a genocide in Bangladesh next to us. Right. Now, what do you call a country? And Canada has a long history of providing refuge to genocidaires, to mass murderers, to criminals. The latest example you saw was a Ukrainian Nazi being feted on the floor of Canadian Parliament. But let's not forget the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland, whose grandfather, Mr. Cholmiak, was a known Nazi who used to put out lists of Jews for the German army to go kill. And Miss Friedland herself worked for a Ukrainian-Canadian newspaper that used to run advertisements and stories glorifying Nazis and the Ukrainian participation in Nazi war crimes. Canada has also supported a lot of, Canada was one of the prime areas for LTT funding, Rahul. A lot of LTT funding used to get raised in Canada, and, that resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, the rape, killing, maiming, God knows what not of hundreds of thousands of people. Now, what do you call a country like that? Is that country your friend or your partner? But more importantly, addressing your question, what do you call a country that spies on you and serves up intelligence to a country that is a home for genocidaires, terrorists, and specifically terrorism aimed at you? Does such a country get a label of being a strategic partner? How? I don't know. We also need to be very, very clear, Rahul, that what we call Khalistan, there is no such thing as Khalistan. Khalistan is a joke. All right. I can today, sitting in my house in Safdarjung Enclave, declare it to be the Republic of Abijitistan. And given the number of followers, I think I have more followers on Twitter than the Khalistan referendum has voters. So, I think my claim of being an independent nation is more legit. But we need to understand what this Khalistan is. It is an organized network of crime which does gun peddling and drug dealing across Punjab, whose back office operations. Now, Canadian firms, Canadian banks have their BPOs in Delhi, across India. Crime operations in Punjab have their BPOs in Canada. And what they do is basically this entire Khalistan sham is when you get accused of crimes to cite political repression. You can't be arrested for political dissidents. Of course, Justin Trudeau arrests you for political dissidents as well. Remember, they labeled this Ukrainian Nazi yesterday a freedom fighter, whereas he was calling his own truckers, protests, terrorists, and far-right Nazis. He actually called them Nazis. But what happens here is they're using this loophole to claim that their drug running and gun dealing is basically a front for freedom, and there being any action against them is a repression for freedom. I think you know a very famous Indian journalist who does tax evasion but claims she's being oppressed for, her views. Pretty much the same game out here.
Okay. Brahma Chelani, what do you see happen next? We're seeing some forms, some suggestions of Trudeau wanting to calm things down just a bit, but he's done all the damage by exploding this diplomatic nuclear tactical weapon. Do you think things will get worse, or is Trudeau likely to see some form of reason, or is that too much to expect?
I think it's in the interest of both Canada and India to arrest the downward spiral in relations. Unfortunately, there have been no new moves by either side to trigger countermeasures by the other side since at least Friday. So there might be some cooling of tensions, but the problem is that Trudeau has painted himself in a corner. He has presented no evidence to back his allegations against India. Instead, one of the unintended consequences of his action in leveling allegations against India is that it has helped to shine a spotlight on Canada's sordid record of harboring extremists, war criminals, and terrorists, not just from India, from multiple countries. So now the spotlight is on Canada. It's partly because of the India allegations that Trudeau has made, and also now because of Friday developments when the Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to a Nazi who now lives in Canada. So people are waking up to the reality that Canada has become a safe haven for all kinds of extremists, terrorists, and war criminals. And I think that in a situation like this, in which Trudeau finds himself cornered, unable to convince his own people at home, people within Canada are demanding that he present some evidence against India. In this situation, what New Delhi can do is to just watch developments quietly. And this is what New Delhi is doing.